President Obama spoke about this matter in Libya this afternoon and said in no uncertain terms that if Gaddafi does not back down, that the UN Security Council resolution will be enforced through military action. He used Gaddafi's threat against rebel forces to try to make his case. Take a listen.
And just yesterday, speaking of the city of Benghazi, a city of roughly 700,000 people, he threatened, quote, "We will have no mercy and no pity." No mercy on his own citizens.
All right, so listening to President Obama's speech and thinking bigger about this, we've got to ask, why Libya? Why not get involved in other countries, also in dire situations? Well, to help answer that question, we go to Michelle Shasadovsky, the editor of Global Research, joining us from Montreal, Canada. Hey there, Michelle. Let's talk about this decision by the U.S. as one of the members of the UN Security Council to support a no-fly zone in Libya, and perhaps why it differs from the reaction to what's going on elsewhere, like, say, in Ivory Coast or Bahrain or Yemen.
Well, first I think we have to understand that this is not really a no-fly zone. A no-fly zone, in fact, implies a bombing campaign, and the preparations are ongoing. I think the timing of this operation at this stage, we can't really make any clear statements, although we have statements made by France and Britain to that effect. I think what should be understood, first of all, that this intervention, even though it is adopted under UN auspices, is in derogation of international law. You can't simply go into a country and start bombing the hell out of the place on the pretext that you're coming to the rescue of civilians. And since when has President Obama come to the rescue of civilians? He's bombing northern Pakistan with drone attacks. He's killing people in Iraq. And not to mention Guantanamo. So that the credibility of the Western stance is very weak. Another aspect is that nowhere in this resolution do they actually mention the fact that we're dealing not with a protest movement, but with an armed insurrection. And consequently, this involves a confrontation between the two sides. There's an arms embargo, but that arms embargo doesn't apply to arms shipment to the rebels. It doesn't imply the assistance which U.S. and Allied special forces have been granting the rebels right from the outset. So from my standpoint and from the standpoint of international law, this is interference in the affairs of a sovereign country. Whether we like Gaddafi or not, that is not the issue. Now, the other aspect, which is very serious, and we have to really analyze it, is that this is a fourth war theater. We have three war theaters today. One is the AfPak war, two is Iraq, three is Palestine, and four is North Africa. Because the possibilities of escalation are there, and what is contemplated is not only an air campaign, it is also a ground war.
I want to. You brought up so many points, Michelle, and I want to just touch upon one of them that you made, but sort of to dig deeper into it. This idea, it's not just an idea, I think it's a fact that Libya is a sovereign country, and that when you have a sovereign country, it's not in the interest of states to get involved, in outside states to get involved in these internal affairs. So why is nobody talking about this? Why was this not a consideration when making this decision?
Well, mind you, China and Russia have made statements to the effect, the diplomatic level, that they are opposed to this military intervention, but they didn't exercise that veto at the United Nations Security Council. They prefer to abstain. Germany has also said, we are not going in there. We're not going to be involved in any military operation. I think that was a very good stance on the part of Germany, and other India and Brazil as well abstained.
Once again, the BRIC countries seem to be sticking together, and of course Germany here too. But I do want to talk about the countries actually leading the charge in this effort, Great Britain and France. Any idea, Michelle? We've heard that they may send in planes even sooner than tomorrow. Any idea what these two countries are up to, what their reasoning is for being so in favor of this move?
Well, Libya has 3.5% of global oil reserves. It has the cheapest oil in the Middle East, as low as $1 a barrel, according to some estimates. And the trophy of this war is oil. Now, I think the participants in this NATO-led operation, because they're also Canadian forces as well from different countries, is the trophy is oil. It's oil and gas. And what these countries are involved there is are they going to share the spoils of war? I should mention that China also has had significant oil interests in Libya prior to the insurrection. So this is part of the battle for oil. It's not a humanitarian war, and you don't come to the rescue of civilians by bombing. Okay, because that's precisely where you get the so-called collateral damage, which is really to the detriment of civilians.
Speaking of collateral damage, Michelle, I want to draw some other comparisons here. We've got a situation that just happened in North Waziristan, Pakistan, right on the border there between Afghanistan and Pakistan. This was a U.S. drone attack that killed 41 people. And, you know, a lot of times when the U.S. government or other governments come out with reasonings for a no-fly zone or other, they cite, as you said, the humanitarian reasoning. How can they say that in one breath? And then we've got these drone attacks happening just hours ago, yesterday.
It's double standards. I mean, they've killed more than 1 million people in Iraq. Now, they can't tell us they're coming to the rescue of civilians. It's absolute nonsense. The situation in Bahrain is very, very serious, and we even have reports that chemical weapons are being used against a non-violent protest movement. And there you have the Fifth Fleet, which is there, and they didn't intervene. They didn't even tell them you're killing people. They just let it happen. Now, the countries, the Gulf states plus Saudi Arabia are part of this coalition. They have already, they've adopted it at the Arab League, at the Organization of African Unity, so that in effect, I think the Western military alliance, what it wants also is to have these other countries do the dirty work for them. Egypt is bringing weapons in. Saudi Arabia has a lot of U.S. military hardware. All of those actions, in fact, would be integrated into NATO, U.S. NATO air defense systems, so that, in fact, the whole logistics of this war would be controlled by NATO, even if it were Saudi Arabia who sends in the fighter bombers into Libya's airspace. But what we have, I think, what we must understand, and world public opinion must understand it. We are on the verge of a fourth war theater in North Africa. It's very difficult to predict how it will unfold, but when you say a no-fly zone and other measures, that means military intervention, and that means war, and that means civilian casualties.
And you know what, Michelle, I don't think you're the only one that thinks this. A couple recent polls just came out that show even the majority of Americans, in some cases, depending on the wording of the poll, 74% oppose the U.S. getting involved in Libya. A lot of them seeing this as just what you said, it as the start of what could be a war of some sorts. Michelle Chossudovsky, editor for globalresearch.ca.